All right, this next one could be a little bit dicey. I was going to avoid it, but I've never addressed this question before. But I said, hey, let's give it a shot. I've been known to have controversial answers before and subjects. Okay, here goes. Dear Louis, what is the best way for a parent to address sex and sexuality with an underage teen? When you know they're going to play around sexually, despite any guidance you may give them not to play. So what's a parent supposed to do with that? That's quite a conundrum. As well do I know, since I've raised 3 kids who are now all adults. So let me put in a disclaimer to start. Regardless of what I say and the guidance I give you, and I shall give it, what's important for any parent, not just on the subject of sex, but on all subjects, remember you are the primary teacher your child hired and contracted with prior to even having been conceived. So you have an obligation. The child knows who you are. The child knows your intelligence. The child knows your vibration. The child knows your consciousness, your levels of spirituality, your level of awakening. Your child's soul knows everything about you and chose you because of who you are and what you bring to the table. Knowing that, the most important thing a parent or parents can do, you have to develop and be clear about your own moral code, whatever that is. It's not going to be the same as everyone else's. You'll have some things in common with others. Maybe your siblings, how they raise their kids, your best friends. Some things will be different. Some will be unique. Some might be extreme. Some might be ultra-conservative. Some might be ultra-liberal. That's not what's most important. What's most important is that you develop and have your own moral code, and that you honor it and stick to it and do the best of your ability, while at the same time being open-minded, open to change, open to being illuminated and to learning new things, and being willing to change your mind about things. You don't have to stick to your guns. If people grow and change all the time, so you have the right to change your mind. You could have said, you were going to do something a certain way, and then 3 years later you learned something else about life, yourself, the world, or what that subject was, and you've completely changed your tune. That's okay. So have that moral code and employ it while being open to change, and avoid unhealthy comparison, unhealthy competition. Avoid getting caught up so much in what other people think or how they judge you or don't judge you. I mean, of course you don't want to, have blinders on like a horse, in traffic, but, be open to input, but don't let it rule you. Don't fall prey to that, keeping up with the Joneses or meeting someone's expectations. You have an obligation. That child hired you because it knew who you were and knew what you were bringing to the table. And more so, the child needed what you have and who you are. So you're actually violating your child by doing what your best friends are trying to convince you to do, or what your parents think you should do, or what society says you should do, or what the moral majority says. Honor yourself. Honor your child by honoring yourself. Now, that having been said, and that supersedes anything else, I might say. So having said that, accept, what I'm saying, take it to heart, and, you be the miner panning for gold. What has value for you, keep, and what doesn't, just toss in the river. I'm not affected by that. So as for this conundrum about addressing sex and sexuality with an underage teen, there are a couple of principles. I'd rather share principles with you than do's and don'ts. Because, and those who've raised teenagers might know a little bit about this. One of the things a teenager abhors more than anything is being told do's and don'ts, particularly don'ts. Because when children enter adolescence, they're entering a phase where they're developing their own identity, and they're starting to cut the apron cords to their parents, to the mother and father figures, or parental figures, because they could be 2 women, 2 men. So they begin cutting the cords to parent or parents, guardians, etc. And so when you start hitting them with, very hard edicts and this kind of dictatorial way of talking to them, you're going to get, pick a finger, you're going to get the middle finger either in words or in behaviors, or they're going to, the more coercive and suppressive you get on the children, the more rebellious they will become. And then what also gets introduced, and I've seen this happen in so many households, the children, if they feel, these adolescents feel that they're not respected and listened to and that their parents aren't open-minded, they will start, and if they feel a constant duress and browbeating from the parents, they will start to lie. They will start to deceive, and they'll start to tell the parents whatever the parents want to hear because they know the parents are closed-minded and they're just not open. And that's very tragically sad. So that's an important thing, to be open-minded, be receptive to what your children have to share. Now, one of the most important principles is to convey to the child and to teach and model. Modeling is the best teacher. So I want to put that caveat out there. Teaching your adolescents, your teens, about the importance of learning to love and respect and honor themselves, which includes their body. So to know that they are special, that they are beautiful, that they are loved, and that they have value and merit. And to, again, avoid the comparisons and competitions with their friends and their classmates and all of that. Because when teenagers are one of the most, if not the most, self-critical phases of a person's life. And the temptation to compare with siblings, with classmates, with friends, with peers is so huge and can be so damaging. So do your best to steer them away from that and to steer them into listening to their heart and to learning to deeply know and understand how beautiful they are and what wonderful beings they are, and to teach them about loving themselves and respecting themselves. And sometimes you can share with them, I'll share you an example of something I said to my children about, I'll use a separate subject on the subject of drugs, because during teen years, especially now more than ever, teens, most all of them will experiment with drugs, and that's another subject just as precarious as this one, as sex and sexuality. And I said to my kids, we didn't have a group gathering, but, you find moments with each one privately. And I'm not saying that's the only way. Some parents might have a family talk, but in my case, there were individual talks. And I shared with them, I said, look, we both know you're probably going to try stuff. We don't say you are, because there are some teens who don't. Very few, but there's some who have zero interest, and they have such a strong character and conviction that they don't succumb to peer pressure, and they're fine. But most will. And I said, look, there's a high likelihood that you're probably going to experiment. And I said to them, I want you to know that I'm very open-minded. Chances are much of what you'll be exposed to, I've tried in my youth, in my teens and early 20s. And what I would prefer is that you trust me and will come to me and ask me questions and share with me. And I promise you, I am not going to punish you or judge you for you being curious about life, because you're going to do what you want to do anyway. And if you feel such a huge opposition from me, you're going to just lie to me anyway and do what you want. I'd rather you come to me, ask me questions. What your friends at your age, with all due respect, they don't have accurate information. You learn stuff in schools, in the locker rooms, in the hallways, in back alleys, from drug dealers. You're not learning the truth. They don't know the truth about what's in stuff. They don't know the truth about what stuff does to your body. They don't know the truth about medical ramifications and implications. They don't know the truth about addiction. They don't know the truth about organ damage. They don't know the truth about combining. They don't know the truth about a lot of stuff, with all due respect. I've lived this. I'm decades older than you, and I'm out the other side of that tunnel. So I will educate you properly about it. I will give you informed, feedback to put you in a position where you have much, much greater clarity and perspective to make more informed decisions. I'll also give you, my advice and recommendations, but I'm not going to punish you for being a teenager, for being curious. You're going to do what you want to do anyway. All teenagers do, with very few exception. And the households who have it the worst, in my experience, are the parents who do zero parenting. I did my 9 months of pregnancy, and now the kids are raised feral. Not raised, that's an oxymoron. The kids are just feral from birth. Those households, and there are many of them, and the opposite extreme, the helicopter parents, the smothering parents, the dictatorial, the dictator parents who just crush the kids and punish them cruelly and unfairly and just choke the living daylights out of them so they can't breathe. Those two extremes create the worst environment for children. And the birth in between is very, very wide, that middle ground, and there's a lot of play there. And those are usually the most well-established kids and the ones who fare the best. It doesn't mean they won't do anything. It doesn't mean they won't try anything. It doesn't mean they won't get into trouble. But those children come out the most well-adjusted. The ones who are feral are lost. They grow up with no guidance whatsoever. And the ones who are crushed have so much damage in their mind they can't make a clear decision. They're actually worse off than the feral ones, because humans are animals, and animals can find their way. And there are some strengths that feral children develop. They become survivors. They develop a lot of intuitive abilities to seek things out and work their way through situations because they were left to fend for themselves. So the ones who get crushed by the parents' overbearing authority and suppression and domineering, soul-crushing ways of being, those children become the most rebellious, the most deceitful, get in the most trouble, and suffer the most damage. So strive toward the middle ground where you can show them what your beliefs are in that moral code I described. You can give them your recommendations, and most of all, create a platform, an environment, so they know that they are respected, honored, trusted, and that you are trustworthy and respectful and honoring, and that you're an open door so that they feel safe to come to you. And if you have that rapport with them, I know some parents who, they've had their teenagers tell them everything. They tell them about, what drugs they want to experiment with. They tell them about their sexual exploits. And I'm not saying that it's good or bad, but it's so amazing when a parent has a relationship with their children where the children feel they can tell them anything. I'll throw in another caveat. Raising my children and going to so many meetings at the schools and meeting so many other parents. One of the things I also vehemently do not recommend, and not a whole lot of parents fall into it, but some do, and it's kind of comical, but it's in a sad way. Parents who they try so hard to fit in and be accepted by their kids that they try to look and act like a teen. They start wearing teenage clothing and adopting the jargon, the colloquialisms that teenagers use. If you really want to get the Olympic gold medal in Dorkville, go ahead and do that, but I don't recommend it. It embarrasses your children to no end. They don't want to see you wearing, teenager clothing. They don't want to hear you talking, like they talk in their little axioms and colloquialisms. It embarrasses them, and they really, really will just they'll shy away from you. You don't have to be a teen to get along with your teen. You just have to love them, respect them, honor them, and be an open door and be welcoming of them. And that's the best thing. So now, in terms of one last thing to say in terms of the sex and sexuality, and all of this has been about that, but I'm giving you a model that applies to all categories. Like I said, drugs, and everything I've said applies to sex and sexuality too. The other really important thing is to tell them to really honor and respect their body. And most importantly, whatever you choose to do, do it only because you in your heart want to do it, not to be liked, to be cool, to be accepted, to get the guy or the girl. That's something you can really impress on a child as a parent, as a teacher for them, because those are the things those are things that prey on their weakness and on their insecurities. You know, everybody wants to get the one they admire, and everybody wants to be liked by their peers, and everybody wants to be cool. But when you teach them to love and respect and honor their body and themselves, and when you teach them to make choices because you want to do something, not because other people are pressuring you, or they're laughing at you, or they'll make fun of you if you don't, you know, impress upon them how immaterial that is and how it doesn't matter. And yes, it may be uncomfortable, and it might not get you those things you think you want, but you'll be a better person, a stronger person, and ironically, the very same people who might be making fun of you will actually be admiring you and looking up to you. They may not admit it, but they will be, because in you they will see strength, they will see character, they will see conviction, they will see maturity, they'll see groundedness, they'll see self-love, and everybody aspires to those great character traits. Now again, being teens, they may not say it, but trust me, and you'll be telling your children, that is what's happening in the silent and mostly unseen realms. So teach your children these things. And yes, some of those things are going to happen, the drugs, the sex, and it's, you know, we all have our moral code, and we all have things we'd like to see our children do and not do. And at both ends of the spectrum. I've encountered many parents who want their children and tell them and actually hand them the drugs. Here, I want you to try this with me rather than out on the street, you know, and tell them about sex and tell them to go have it. So there, you know, it's not about don't. There are some at the other end of the spectrum who are pushing their kids to do these things. It's a big part of your growth, and you need to have these experiences. So again, the model and the principles that I'm sharing with you apply to all realms of the spectrum and to all subjects within the spectrum of child rearing, particularly with teens and adolescents. So I hope that's been helpful to you. All righty.